So you did Donda, right?
Yep, I mixed the whole album and mastered the whole album.
The whole thing.
I am basically the only person on that album that's on every single song. In fact, I would say besides Ye, but he's not on the song Thank God I Made It.
Mm.
So I'm actually the only one on the whole on the whole album.
Yo, what's going on, guys? We just did a 45-minute live interview with IRKO. He's a 24 times platinum Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer. He's worked with everybody from Kanye West to Rick Ross, West Side Gun, Playboi Carti, 21 Savage, The Baby. He engineered every single song on Donda. He told me a lot of great stories about how he got his start, coming from absolutely nothing, being an Italian immigrant in America, making his way in the industry. His story is truly motivating, but even more so than that, he's also a really kind and interesting, insightful person. So I hope you guys enjoy his wisdom and his advice as much as I enjoyed having the conversation with him. And of course, don't forget to follow the stream at twitch.tv/Volksgoat so you can catch the next stream as it's happening. All right, enjoy.
And I love it because there's other content online, but a lot of the other content, it's either like just damn near fucking comedy, you know? So I love that you guys put much effort into what you're doing.
No, thank you.
You should be on Nebula too, bro. You should look into that.
I'm an owner in Nebula.
Oh, dude. So why is your stuff on Nebula too?
Yeah.
Oh, but dude, you see, on the YouTube, I watch basically your channel is like the music version of all the other channels that I watch.
Yeah.
So anything that's like smart, intelligent, brainiac shit, like I don't like to watch stupid shit. So,
nice. Yeah.
So anything from Johnny Harris is one of my favorite ones, for example. Yeah. There's a bunch of Vox shit, all of that. And anyway, in all of those channels, there's been like a span of maybe 2 years in which these people were fucking pounding with Nebula.
Yeah.
And I love intelligent content with no commercials. So, boom.
No, yeah, definitely. No, I'm honored. Yeah, Nebula, I think is a great idea. I'm very excited with how it's going right now. There needs to be more like, it's like a lot of the stupid shit on YouTube makes a lot of money. But if you're Johnny Harris, you don't make as much money as like Mr. Beast or something.
Right, exactly.
But you put in just as much work. It takes just as much time, So yeah, it's good to see people get rewarded for their work.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, I'm glad we connected, man. I remember when I first reached out to you, I was still building this place.
Yeah, it looks crazy in there. It looks like a spaceship,
Oh yeah, man. It's incredible. And dude, the next time you come to LA, man, please let me know. I would love to show you this place because, especially for a music nerd like me and you, hearing music in this place, it's a different experience. And the only way for me to describe it to you is it's like an outer body experience. You gotta really live it to understand what it means.
No, I'm gonna be coming to LA in 4 weeks. So June 21st, I'm going to give a quick introduction, if you don't mind. And then I have a couple of questions that I would love to ask you.
Cool.
Okay. So
and just for the record, it's IRKO.
IRKO. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
I am not a good pronunciation person.
It's all right.
So this is IRKO. IRKO is a renowned audio engineer. Is that the right term?
Yeah. I'm a mixing engineer, which is a specific category within the audio engineer. So yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Sometimes I don't know which words to use, but so would you mind telling like a couple of things that people might have heard before that you've worked on?
Oh, for sure. I had the pleasure and honor of mixing so many big artists and small artists, incredible talent. From Snoop Dogg to Killer Mike, from Playboi Carti to The Baby, Kanye West, The Weeknd, blah, blah, blah. The list is very long. You can go and check it out on my website.
Yeah.
Also, because I forget it very often.
So how did you get into mixing like hip hop? How did you end up doing that?
My passion for audio came before my passion for music, which is very strange. It doesn't happen that way usually. I remember being a kid, like 6 or 7 years old, messing around with stereo EQs and or maybe the car stereo, whatever, because I needed to have that sound, right, that I was after, namely the bass.
Yeah.
And that's how I discovered boom bap, hip hop from New York back in the 90s, because that genre at the time had the biggest bass. So it was just natural for me to fall in love with the music that had the biggest subs.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened. And that's also how I learned English, listening to rap music from New York. And so here we are 25 years later, just still doing the same thing, messing around with the EQs and stuff to get the biggest bass we can.
No, that's amazing. This is totally digression. I remember when I was 7 years old, I wrote a newspaper on one piece of paper, and it said like the weather. It was like sunny outside. It was like my weather report. I tried to sell it to my parents for 50 cents. So I later end up writing videos and making productions and putting them on the internet. And it was just like a future prediction. And I love to hear these stories where someone's like, oh, a car racer is like, oh, I was trying to race the car when I was like 5 years old. And it's like, you just get that obsession and it becomes your lifelong passion.
Yeah.
So you said that you learned English through music. So where did you grow up?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Venice, Italy. And so culturally, geographically, very, very distant from, EPMD or Busta Rhymes or Nas or whatever I ended up listening to, right? But this was the era before the internet, before having basically every kind of music in your pocket. It was a quest to get your hands on albums, CDs, cassettes, whatever the case was, coming from the States, and even more so for something of a niche, because back then that genre wasn't. Nobody even knew what it was in Europe, let alone in America. Actually, even early in the 90s, it wasn't really that well known, So it was a different world, a different era. Even for my actual work, learning all the technical skills and the tricks of the trade and all of that, I, was getting little info here and there from Scratch magazine and stuff like that. But again, that was also very difficult to find, and there was the cultural and the language barrier. So it's when I describe it, it's like such a distance kind of place in time and geography. That's it's interesting, right?
Yeah, I started to listen to music around 10 years ago. I'm 23, and I remember that there wasn't as much information 10 years ago. Like you didn't know everything. And I feel like today it's like we know too much. We know everything about anything you want to know about. You can become over stimulated with just all this information about things. So I imagine that it's easier to like develop a passion for things sort of when it's something that you have to like search for and so how did you
and it becomes this like underground thing, Oh, I just found out what Dre used for the preamp of Snoop's vocal on Doggy Style because on this forum or whatever, right? Or on this magazine it said this and said that, right?
No, definitely. I remember reading like there aren't blogs anymore, but there would be blogs and there would be like rumors. Like no one knew what The Weeknd was when he first started because he didn't have Twitter and Instagram. So it was like, is this a bunch of guys at the same time or is it one person and no one had any idea? But now we don't we don't have things like that anymore.
That's true. But there are still some rumors and people that get together to talk about the rumors. I remember when I did the album with Black Thought, that was a bunch of audio nerds, especially the audio guys like myself, that were speculating on what gear I used or didn't. Because on my YouTube channel, I still had a bunch of videos, very old, like 10, 15 years old videos, where I was working on big consoles and using, all compressors and things like these things, like machines. So they were like, with that sound, he must have used analog compressors and stuff like that. And I was like, no, man, it's all digital.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So what was your first experience like mixing something or doing anything with audio?
It was my music at first that I was producing and thinking that I was like this legit producer where I clearly was not. And so that was the beginning. But that actually was it. Like, because I was making mediocre music that needed a whole bunch of backflips to make it work sonically, I learned to do the part that eventually became my career, which was the audio engineering. So the first stuff was my stuff for sure. And then, of course, this, as I opened my first, second, and then third studio, the clientele got bigger and bigger and better and better. So the first maybe decade of projects that I didn't go nowhere. They're, nowhere to be found even today. They were very small things, but eventually, as the first awards starting to show up on the wall and stuff like that, and then of course moving to the States, that helped a lot with getting bigger and more accomplished artists that were just a lot more important in all kinds of ways.
So you were doing your first, this was in Italy?
Yeah, I went to audio engineering school in Italy. I opened my first studio in Italy, which was the basement of my dad's house. So nothing crazy at all. It was like a room, basically, right? Yeah. And then I opened my second studio. I was 21, 22 when I did. And I went, in typical IRKO fashion, I went from a musty basement to a standalone, amazing building with 6 live rooms and the whole thing. Like, from nothing to...
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, after I was done finishing it, that's when I went to New York and I started doing my thing over there,
That's great. So when did you know it was time to take it to the next level and go to New York?
I didn't. I was almost forced by one of my clients that was in New York, and he kept, busting my balls about going to New York. And I was like, dude, I just opened this humongous studio. I was 20 something, broke, because all the money I had and I wanted to put into my studio, right? And so I was like, how the hell? And so I bought the cheapest plane ticket that I could get with Swiss Airlines. And I remember it was like $300. It was like the cheapest thing. Come to find out, it's because I had to sleep in the airport, which I did not arranged for. So of course I had to sleep on the bench. It was like terrible. But when you're your age, it's like, fine, well, let's just go and make it happen.
Yeah,
so I did. And so I get to New York, and this is 2006, and I didn't know nobody. Quite literally, I think I knew 2 people in the entire city, and one of them was this guy that I've been working with, and with him, I got my first double platinum award for working on a JayZ record. So
nice.
That was great. Yes, that was really good.
Do you want to tell?
So that was the moment where I was like, okay, yeah, I think I need to make the
move. It was a good idea. Is there a story to working on a JayZ record? Is there anything you can share about that? Anything memorable?
Yeah, well, my contribution to that record, Kingdom Come, right? The red CD, the red album cover project, was very small. Like, my contribution was very, very small, but it was enough because, well, it was a major deal for me, obviously, because that was like the first big thing that I had done in the States, right? And then it was on track 1, which in any album is the most played song. So that was a big deal. And that opened up a bunch of doors that, I was able to go through. And even though it was just like a little opening, I was like, I'm going in, I don't care. And that, in fact, led me to work on a bunch of different projects, which eventually got me to work with Kanye West as well, and that, again, fast forward another 10 years or whatever, I ended up doing one of the most influential albums of 21. So that was, it's a snowball effect.
With
20 years old.
So you did Donda, right?
Yep. I mixed the whole album and mastered the whole album.
The whole thing.
I am basically the only person on that album that's on every single song. In fact, I would say besides Ye, but he's not on the song Thank God I Made It. So So I'm actually the only one on the whole album.
You're the only person who worked on every track, or who
Yeah,
appears on every track.
yeah,
So how many details can I ask about working on Donda? Like what is it like to start working on it? What's it like during the process? How does it come to be? Things, do you want to just
yeah,
share as much as you can?
yeah. Sure. Well, so Donda, uh, as it has been presented to the world, is the result of more than 2 years of making the album. So production, writing, recording, whatever. I'm sure you heard of the Wyoming months, for example. You know, all of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, moved this camp around in different places and to make the music that eventually ended up being done, right? So I came in at the very, very end. So I was like the last guy. You know, the we joked with the whole team that I was like the guy that slams the ball into the hoop at the very end of a very long play, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what happened, you know. So I was passed the baton at the very end, and it took about I want to say maybe 6 weeks of my life, and during those 6 weeks, there was no uh, living second that was dedicated to nothing but that album.
Mm.
So you know, I've been I got squeezed at one time. In fact, I'm pretty sure you remember there was like a screenshot of one of my text messages talking about I almost died because I've been working like 40 hours straight, kind of shit.
Yes. So
Um,
you were the person who had the medical incident, or
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
There were several text messages that leaked out. Most of them were like recording engineers. I remember one that where the guy was he got fired or whatever because he didn't show up to a recording session or whatever. And then there were other I don't remember exactly, but I remember these two, like mine obviously, and then the one about the recording engineer that got fired. Um, but yeah, so 6 weeks of running and running and running and making this happen. I started the mix at the stadium in Atlanta, where uh, right before the no, right after the second listening party. Was it after the second one? Yeah, I think yeah, it was after the second one. And then did a week, you know, in the locker rooms. Again, you might have seen pictures and stuff of that.
Yeah.
Uh, of that. Not the best thing, especially when I have a studio like this to
Yeah.
work out of with perfect acoustics. And that was like the exact opposite of perfect acoustics. So it was what it was, but whatever.
So
And after that,
you're up in there doing that every day, all day. You're not eating. Are you eating food? Or are you eating dinner or breakfast or anything? Or
yeah. So the routines and the rhythms. So okay, wait, let me backtrack. Everything that was Ye related was at the stadium during that week. And when I say everything, I mean from the shoe people to the drummers for the live events to the art people. It was everything and everybody was there, right? So it was a 24-hour operation, but not everybody worked 24 hours. So I was trying to keep it um, to a manageable time frame because after a while, when your ears are fried, you know, that's what I do. I need to make critical decisions based on what I'm hearing. And so if I'm not hearing right, it's time wasted, basically, right? So no, I definitely was sleeping and eating and everything. Yes, but it was you know, working long hours, very long hours. Then after that, I moved to a studio nearby where I was for maybe like 4 or 5 days, 3 4 days, something like that. And then from there, I came back here where I finished the whole thing. So the longer amount of time that I spent on mixing and mastering the album all along was here, actually. But the beginning stages, which usually are the most crucial, did happen in Georgia.
okay.
So yeah, so 6 weeks, and then you know, ran, did all the edits, did all the revisions, which for the newer songs was a lot of revisions because they were less consolidated into a final form, right? When the older songs were more set basically. And that's it. And then I think it was like a Saturday afternoon or maybe early evening where I finally got the green light from Ye to wrap it all up. And that was it. I submitted it maybe like at maybe 1 a.m. LA time, so middle of the night New York time, and Saturday night, which it was actually really strange because there's a bunch of spaces in this building, right? There's living quarters, different studios and stuff. So there's always people here. But that one night, there was nobody here. I was by myself. Even my lady was not here. And so I ended up sending the files to Universal for the release, right? And I go to sleep. I was, of course, dead. I needed to go to sleep. And then I wake up Sunday morning, like at maybe 11 or something like that. And my phone was red hot from notifications because the album was out. And I think before the afternoon hit, it was already gold. So that was like, all right.
That's an incredible story. What could you share about working with Kanye? Positive, transcendental, whatever. How would you describe it if you don't mind me asking?
It's intense, of course. It's a lot, but it's not more. It's not more different per se than working with a bunch of other talents. The cool thing that's a little bit different is that, and this has not changed over the decades more than a decade that I've been working with him, which is he will give me very specific instructions on how to do whatever he's after, usually the vocals, but not necessarily. And that's like those three indications, right? And that's it. Then all the other choices and solutions and visions or whatever that I come up with, they don't get challenged unless they are, of course, not in line with his. Then, of course, we'll talk about him, obviously. But so, in other words, he gives me big freedom of interpreting the song in the best way I see fit, with the caveat of making sure that I do respect the initial requests. And that's really cool. Usually it's the spectrum of interaction that I have with my clients. It's usually either the super controlling person that does not want his or her song to be really messed with too much, or the other way around, which is like, here's the thing, IRKO, you got 25 platinums and and all of that. Just make it be the way it should be, and that's it. He's a little bit in between because he, with Donda, for example, on his vocal, he specifically asked no delays, no reverbs, right? So I needed to hit that mark. But then everything else is like, do whatever you want. And that's really cool, because it's a little bit of a different approach. Other than that, it's very simple, I do my mix, send it in, and then he texts me or calls me back, whatever, and says, hey, let's change this, let's change that. And yeah, the first song that I had mixed for Donda, I remember him calling and screaming on the top of his lungs, talking about, he said that he was elated by the mix. And I was like, all right, okay.
So you did all of Donda, and what would you say are the characteristics of the mixing on that? How would you describe the feel of what you put into it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of episodes that needed the expected low end on the 808s and the big volume, the big impact of any, I guess, urban-ish or pop 808-ish kind of production, right? You need to have the volume, the smack, and all that. But then and so maybe this is like a fourth of the album, maybe. I don't know. I never did the math, but it's a slice of it, right? And then you have, for example, for that is Off the Grid, Hurricane, 808 bass tracks, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have the Moon-like songs where there's no bass. That could be the dark side of the moon in a 2020 kind of interpretation, right, if you will. But these songs need to cohabit the same movie, the same film, like going from one track to the next to the next. It needs to be something that kind of works together. And that has been one of my specialties. I believe that may be also the reason why he ended up choosing me for this album, right? Because it's painting a picture that's, an hour long, and in our case, what is it, like 2 hours and some change long?
Yeah, it's very long.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different scenes. Like I always say that the songs in an album are like scenes in a movie, right? Each scene is a different thing. One is brighter, one is shorter, one is whatever. But then they need to be worked together in an entire body of work, which is the album, right? So, so there was a great degree of trying to marry content that wouldn't really be presented in the same piece of art, and in any kind of way we gotta make it work, also there's a lot of songs that don't have kicks and there's only 808s. Hurricane is one of them. Hurricane, arguably the biggest record of the album, didn't have the production was very, very minimal. It's like 5 sounds, which I love, by the way. That's the best way to produce music, so there were a lot of those things. Also, another thing, half the music industry was in that album. So yes. Imagine the amount of recording engineers that sent me stuff from everywhere, recorded in from a boat to a hotel to a studio to even the stadium where I was. So a lot of very different stuff that I had to funnel into a thing that was digestible properly by the audience,
That gives me the question, was there anything that was particularly difficult because of all the different pieces that had to come together?
Not more or less than any other project. I guess maybe one thing was that a lot of features were not informed that the album was going to be a clean album. Also, I actually don't know if the decision was made until the very end. So some did not want clean edits just by muting or tape stopping stuff or whatever. And so some of them re-recorded their versions where they changed the bad words into others that will be okay. So there was a little bit of that. But I mean, this is minutia, nothing crazy, working with a big personality, like, yeah, of course, has its challenges. And, even me, like a freaking engineer, was under the microscope during those 6 weeks. It was like, I was on the freaking news, I'm like, dude, like, I'm a studio cat, this is where I live. This is where I'm every day, like, I'm not on the tabloids.
Yeah, I remember the day that I saw the headline that an engineer had been fired. I thought, I hope it wasn't you, because I knew that you were working there, and I thought, oh no. And luckily, it wasn't you. But
no. If you can see, like, on the text, it did say something about not showing up. That's clearly for a recording session, not for a mixing session. But it's fine, it doesn't matter. It's funny too, because I remember seeing online some people that were talking about me getting fired. I'm like, well, no, I didn't. But and the thing about that, getting fired in that situation, in that camp at that time, was almost the norm. So don't think that because that guy got fired, he was trash or anything like that. It was like, with him, it's like that, you're out. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes it's not even called for.
So I don't want to just talk about Donda. If you don't mind me asking a few more questions other than Donda.
Yeah, of course.
So you mentioned, I just happened to put out a long video about Playboi Carti, and you mentioned that you've worked with him before. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
No, I worked with him on Donda. That was the first time working with him. Yes.
Okay.
But it's interesting because on that one, I was with the producers that had worked with him before Donda.
Mhm.
And when the files for his vocals came in, he does the chain thing, like the noise of the chain in his recordings.
Yeah.
And I had a whole thing like, are we supposed to remove this? What am I doing? So good thing OG Volta informed me that that's not that's part of the thing. Like he records with the thing like this, like in front of the microphone.
Yeah. So he's holding it.
So
He's holding it up so you can
right,
hear. So you can hear. That's really funny.
exactly.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two like clinking against each other. I've always wondered if that was on purpose or just
Right.
because. No, that's funny.
Yeah. That was definitely interesting.
So
Yeah.
I was wanting to ask you, day to day, because you have big things that come up every once in a while, right? And then, but day to day, what does the career of a mixing engineer look like? What are you doing today, tomorrow, and the day before that, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because I get like if I open up the folders of my mixes that I currently have open, it goes from like the typical pop to the trap. I'm doing a rock album right now. It's like everything, like it goes from one thing to the other so quick. Street Fighter 6, the video game's coming out in a month. I mixed the whole video game, for example.
Really? Really?
Yeah, the whole thing. So that is a whole different world too, because it's music for a video game, so it's a different thing,
Yeah.
And it's just like when doing a prog rock band, it's a completely different thing than I'm doing a record with Rick Ross now, right? Completely different thing, so yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, my day to day is I usually start around 10 a.m. I work until lunchtime. I usually do the first half of one song. Then after the lunch break, I rock out until maybe like 6 or something like that. And that's when I usually do another half of another song. And then it just keeps going Monday through Friday. And work comes in mainly through my website, through the contact info. It's like people, producers, artists, label managers, whatever, hit me up. And behind the website, I have two guys that are working for me that are gathering the potential bookings. So basically, about 10 years ago or so, I started only working on music that I like. So my guys collect the MP3s of potential mix work that's coming in. Then I listen to it, and if I like it, then I in the Dropbox I just put the green selector for those that I like and the red one for those that I don't. And then my guys are in contact with whoever that has been contacting them, so producers, musicians, managers, artists, whatever. And then that's when the procedure starts with gathering the files and everything else. And yeah, I mix the record until I'm happy with it, and then I share it with whoever has creative control, and then together we fine tune it, and then I deliver everything else, and then the plaques appear on the wall.
Casually, the plaques just
casually
they come in. Do you have too many? Are you running out at this point, or running out of space to put them on the wall?
Yeah, I'm a little tight. You're right. Yeah.
That's very funny. So you only work on music that you want to work on. I understand. Doing a lot of like freelancing interviews, things. I'm still in the stage where I sometimes have to do things that I don't want to do, and I'm like waiting for the day when they're coming to me, so I don't have to talk to anybody who I don't want to talk to. I'm very excited.
Yeah, the first decade of any entrepreneurial life is hard, and for those where the service is coming from the person that owns the business, it kind of goes without saying that the first 10 years you got to do everything because you got rent dude kind of thing,
Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah.
And then slowly as your accolades grow together with your career and yourself, usually you can afford to say no to things, which is very difficult at first, but
No, it's
pays
definitely,
off.
yeah, 100%. That's very true. I don't want to keep you too long. If I just have a few more questions that I'd love to ask you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
For gear in your studio, can I just ask, what do you use for in terms of speakers? Do you ever use headphones or anything?
Right. I show you exactly everything. I don't know if I can flip the camera on this thing. Let me see. Did it flip or not? Oh no, I turned it off. Wait.
Yeah, that just turned it off.
Yeah. Okay. No,
There you go.
sorry. Oh, here it is. I've never used this thing, so. All right. So, there you go. So
Nice.
this is my setup. This studio is entirely built within a concrete cage.
Wow.
So we're effectively in a bomb shelter. These are my main speakers.
Wow.
For ratio, just so you understand the size, this is a 12-inch woofer, and that's a 18.
Oh my God.
And there's two of them. So one is on the other side.
Wow.
These speakers are humongously loud. These are my other speakers and stems. Those are like classic, everyday mixing speakers. Here on this side, we got the preamp section where we have stuff to push microphones. And then this here is my compressor bay. There's another one at the bottom, but now the stuff is out for maintenance. Then back here, since we're talking about microphones and whatnot, we got the best looking and sounding booth of the planet.
Wow.
Look at this thing. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful in there.
Oh, yeah. And it sounds amazing, too. So this is the gear, basically. In terms of my work, all of it happens on Pro Tools. So my entire mix is digital. So it does not, even though it could be, data can be sent out to use with the gear. I actually don't. So my entire thing is mobile. So I can, as long as I have a Pro Tools rig, I can open it up wherever.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so this is it. And then behind over there, out there, well, I can actually give you a peek. There's another studio.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is my infinity mirror. Look at this thing. Isn't that trippy?
Yes.
So this is the... Oh, you know what? I can't show you. There's a session in there right now. But anyway, there's a smaller studio in there where...
So those are all your plaques right there, though?
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
Do you want to? Yeah. Can you flex them real quick? Can you just remind everyone that you're more successful than them, real quick? If you don't mind.
Say that. Talent Quality record that I did with 88 Keys. I did a track on there. This movie, I did a track on there too. International plaques, Spotify plaques, RIAA plaque. Oh, that's the JayZ one I was talking about.
Amazing.
And that's Donda right there. This is my Grammy wall, and so forth.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have one last question for you. I'll let you go, but I'd love to know, just in terms of that studio, how long did it take to design that? Because it looks like a feat of design in itself. Like, what was that undertaking like?
Dude, yeah, like you see all the white hair, it's because of the fucking studio.
Okay.
That's where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah, man. From very beginning to day of opening, it was 6 years.
Wow.
6 years in which I turned what used to be a parking lot. This was nothing. Like I built the entire building.
Oh, so you have the whole building?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it used to be literally a slab of concrete onto which I had my cars parked. And then, demo the whole thing. But wait, that's the construction. Even before we got to the construction, it took me about a year to find the space the lot, meaning the property, like the actual real estate, right? And then another 2 years, another year or so to put together the team. So that means the acoustician, the engineer, the architect, and the building firm, the construction firm. And then 2 years to get the permits approved. 2 years. That was the most soul crushing 2 years because nothing was happening.
What is the lot size of the building?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It's a big place though. I think that the front, I want to say that it's 60 by 40, but
that's big.
That's a big place.
Wow.
And the building is 2 stories, by the way, too. So it's large. Yeah, it's large. And so then after the permits, construction of the outer shell, so the outside, the concrete piece that I was talking about, that was another year. And then the inside, which is everything you've seen here, that was another year also. So.
Wow. Okay,
that was a lot.
That's incredible. Can I ask, was it over or under $3 million to get it built? Can I ask?
Under.
Okay. Under or over 2 million?
Just about.
Okay. That's what it sounds. That is an incredible. I am so impressed that you could get, like, that's insane. That just the
not bad for an immigrant.
No, absolutely. That is it's an incredibly inspiring story on that side as well. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I would love to keep asking questions. I'm going to let you go.
Of course.
If you would like, next month on the 22nd or the 23rd, I would love to come by and record some more content and just ask you more questions. I would love to do that.
Absolutely. Make sure you have a little playlist of your favorite songs that you want to hear in here, because it's a different experience.
Do you have tinnitus from that, or your ears?
Tinnitus is always around the corner for everybody, but even more so for me. So yeah, I don't actually blast music that loud all the time. Yeah. But sometimes, you want to feel it out a little
just
bit.
for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, IRKO. I truly appreciate this conversation. This is very insightful and interesting. So thank you so much for coming on the stream.
You're very welcome, man. I love your channel. I love what you do. I love your personality and your love for music. We definitely share. So
absolutely. Awesome. All right. Thanks again. See you later.
You got it, man. Take care. Bye.
Yo, that was so sick, dude. Yo, who was watching that? Was my mic low? Yeah, it probably was. Yo, that guy is so real. What an inspiring guy. He comes from Italy and just likes music, and he ends up being a mixing legend. He's got like fucking 100 plaques on his wall. That was crazy.